Hey everybody, this is my 55-gallon gourami tank, and right now we are looking at an angelfish that I have grown out in a 20-gallon tank upstairs, and eventually it just got so big that I had to move it, and I brought it downstairs and I put it in here in my 55-gallon tank. And when I transferred it, I simply scooped it out of the tank with a net. I carried it downstairs in the net, and then I dipped the net right here into the tank, and I let the angelfish out, and it has been happily swimming around ever since. And I had someone ask me if I would shoot a video and discuss what I do when I transfer fish from one tank to another, whether or not I quarantine them, how long I quarantine them, whether I drip acclimate them, and so on and so forth. And I don't bother doing that. My water is so similar in all of my tanks that it's not really necessary. I know I just transferred a rainbow fish the other day from one tank to another, as many of my regular viewers will know. And I immediately experienced problems with that fish. It began swimming funny within about 2 days of being in the tank. And I've looked at it, and I have come to the conclusion that being a rainbow fish, they're notorious for being jumpers and dashers, and probably just the fact that the fish was in a new environment, unfamiliar. It probably either ran smack into the glass at the end of the tank, or it jumped into the lid and bashed itself into the lid really hard. That's the way it's moving around. That's the way it's swimming. It doesn't look like it's something to do with the water chemistry or anything else. It's not a swim bladder issue. It definitely looks like it's knocked itself senseless. It is still alive, but it's not doing a whole lot better. It's still kind of swimming around, pointing at the surface and kind of going the corkscrew thing. So I can't tell whether it's looking a little better or not, but it is still alive, so I'm leaving it alone. But typically I don't do any of that acclimation when I transfer fish from one tank to another. As I said, my water in my tanks is so similar that it doesn't make a difference. In fact, we will have a look at my rainbow fish here for a moment, and you can see exactly what I mean by how it's doing. So it's still swimming around like that, and again, I really think that's a result of it either jumping and smacking the glass, or just dashing straight into the end of the tank because it was in an unfamiliar environment. It might have bashed into the piece of woodwork that's in this tank. I do not believe it is the water that caused a problem. In fact, afterwards I went around and double checked all of the parameters that I'm capable of checking, and they're all so similar that you'd think I took two samples out of the same tank at different times of day or something. The total dissolved solids were less than 100 points difference, and the tank that the fish came from was sitting at about 298, just under 300, and this tank here is just over 200 parts per million. So not a lot in the way of dissolved solids. I took a couple of pH dip tests and I put them next to each other. Both pieces of paper looked virtually identical, so the pHs in the tanks are, the difference between pH is negligible. The temperature might be a difference of a degree or two, but a degree or two doesn't make any difference at all to fish when you're moving them. And that's about all I can think of. I did test the nitrate. Not that that's going to make any kind of difference, but the nitrate in this tank was about maybe 20 parts per million, and the nitrate in the tank it came out of was maybe 25 parts per million or something. Neither tank had high nitrates, and the difference between the two was not significant. So there's no chance of shock from, dissolved solids. There's no chance of a pH shock. There's no difference in my water that would preclude me from simply picking one fish out of this tank and, say, plopping it right into that tank. It wouldn't phase that fish at all. I've done it more times than I care to remember over the years, and I've never had a problem with it. Maybe I'll sit down if I really feel like it and get in the mood for it. I'll sit down and I'll shoot a video about acclimating fish or acclimatizing fish, depending on where you're from. Either pronunciation is acceptable. I say acclimate, but plenty of other people say acclimatize. So maybe I'll sit down and do a video talking about that. But again, my water is so similar that there is no need for acclimatization. And the 15 minutes that you're really, you know, going to spend dripping water from one tank to another, that's not doing anything for the fish anyway. That's not really going to change anything in my situation. So there you go. That's what I think is going on with my funny swimming rainbow fish there. I think it bashed itself, and that's why it's swimming funny. And no, I do not quarantine or drip or anything with my fish between tanks, because my waters are so similar that that's not necessary. So let me hear your thoughts down below. Let me know if you want to hear my 2 cents on acclimating fish and the drip acclimation versus floating the bags and all that kind of stuff. I can sit down and talk about that for a little while if anybody's interested in hearing my opinion on that. And opinion it will be, so remember that. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. There's your brief little update. Hope you enjoyed that. Wish it was a more cheerful one. Sorry about all this looking at that fish, but that's how it goes sometimes. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you real soon in the next one.